why Java is a horrible horrible language, right? And that works with any other programming language. You can say, why Visual Basic is a horrible language? Why C++ is a horrible language? And you will find those things, and you will you can actually read all these all these aggregations of criticism of a programming language. And you may find out that some things really don't work. I would, in fact, encourage you to research certain things. For example, there's pieces of code available here as examples which explain particular situations which make people unhappy, right? So some things really don't work, and some things really are miss, even at the programming language. So that's why the programming language level, so we need to experiment and make sure that what we think is possible is indeed is possible, and will not take half of your lifetime to implement, but some reasonable time. So testing is very important. But I mean, again, you can find a lot of criticism on existing tools, existing software, existing programming languages, existing operating systems, file systems, hardware, and so forth. So it's all part of that experimentation that you really need to be critical about this idea and make sure that things really do work as expected. Design and programming are iterative activities. So if a management thinks that, okay, now that we have the design in place, now it's time to write some code. So by next by President's Day 2014, we're going to be done with this, guaranteed. It's absolutely flawed assumption. Design and programming in all non-trivial projects is an iterative process. You constantly run into problems designing something. Sometimes the design could be good, but with that design, what's being designed, it could be very difficult to provide the user interface. And so you need to design more things in your sort of like business layer that supports the user interface effectively, so that the way the user is interacting with your system is a much better user experience. So sometimes even user interface may contribute to roadblocks and difficulties, or likewise. You could have implemented already a lot of user interface and realize it's not a convenient user interface. And that way, you may discover that you may add another classes in your system and tweak the user interface to work somewhat differently, again, to make it more successful. So that part constantly driving, this iterations of going back to design, right? If you're making changes in the user interface and the state of screens and websites and who knows what changes, all these gadgets that the user use, then that immediately contributes to those iterations in design, going back to the drawing board and then going back to the programming, right? So programming is not always writing new code. In fact, most of the time it is all about changing already existing code, right? And again, if you work on your homework, most likely what you type in first goes pretty quick, but then to make it work, you kind of just stare at the code and just think, why doesn't it exactly work? What do I need to change, and so forth. So it's basically looking at already existing code and trying to make it work properly, right? With more experience, some things will go faster, right? But again, if you run into a situation, it's just basically working with already existing code, your own code or someone else's code. I should probably have a homework where I would just give a problem, right? And the the challenge for the homework should be find existing solution on the web and try to download that and make it work for this particular homework. And try how difficult this can be, right? Because it's never copy and paste. It's always copy, paste, and then make it work. And this can be more challenging than writing it from scratch. Because when you write it from scratch, you still remember everything, right? At that particular moment, when you write your method or your class, couple of classes, you still everything is in your brain. But when you download it and you look at it, you have to relearn everything that someone did. If it's just not just simply hit the compile button, but adopt already existing solution and make it work for your own challenge is not so easy, right? So just thinking about it, it's very easy to underestimate challenges, right? I mean, it's very easy. Like, time-wise, resource-wise, and so forth. It also is hard to transform abstract ideas into practice. Abstract, again, is very kind of overused word in object-oriented programming and elsewhere. Abstract means that everything on the computer is abstract, right? Typical, sort of like a mechanical clock has all these, gears and connections and links, and so it goes by its own physical nature. In software, everything is digitized. So in software, by definition, everything is abstract, right? You cannot have a character or this picture, right? This picture is a series of zeros and ones. But we have tools that transform zeros and ones into a picture. So this picture is an abstraction of a real picture compared if this was a painting or some sort of scratch pad, drawing, right? It's an abstraction. It doesn't exist. If you look at this file that contains this picture, there's zeros and ones in it, right? So it's an abstraction. So that in itself contributes to the complexity of transforming ideas that are naturally abstract on the computer into practice, so that you can convince the users that they're doing practical things. So design and programming are human activities. Design and programming are human activities, and so you really need to. I think you need to adjust your vision, especially if you're a manager. I think to envision that this activity is going to be performed by particular people that are part of your team. If you hire a different set of people, that activity will be different. It's not going to be the same. You really have to realize how, what is taking place. So human factor is very important in this design. That's why, the idea is that almost anything can be outsourced to a third party. And so you can compete for lower cost of software production. Can be a very difficult proposition, and you can actually, you will get something back, but it may not be even recognizable. I actually was part of the company that outsourced a project to another country, and when it was done, no one could even recognize it. It was so bad, right? So it's just because, again, going all the way back to just a normal sort of okay, we have this project, let's work on this project situation. It's also human activity. It's not like you can just take someone out and replace them because they're just coding, right? No, that's completely wrong assumption. Obviously, you're going to work with people who are more experienced and less experienced. You could be a novice. I can be a novice if I learn a new programming language tomorrow. I will be a novice. So I will always be looking for help and for guidance from more experienced people. So experience definitely counts. So someone has to be, it's an ideal situation, an experienced person who actually has done things is an important kind of beacon, an important part of this human activity of design and programming. And the design, even the design, put aside programming, cannot be mastered through theoretical study alone. It's just that simple.